Welcome to Know, I'm Ashley Jenkins.
I'm Turney.
Tired of listening to people blather on in your video games? You just want to get to the shooty parts? Then you've entered the right generation, my friend.
More and more games are losing their single-player campaigns in favor of a bigger focus on competitive multiplayer. If you're wondering exactly why that is, well, Cliff Bleszinski has some answers for you.
Dude huge, Cliffy B! He's always good for a soundbite.
Yes.
The former Gears of War lead spoke with PC Gamer this weekend at PAX South and had plenty to say about the state of multiplayer shooters. After talking a little bit of smack about the art style of shooters like Overwatch, Cliffy B went on to talk about the trend of shooters moving away from single-player campaigns. His new game, Lawbreakers, which features grappling hooks and behind-the-back shots against your enemies, is just one example. It's almost like he's biased.
That's so interesting. When asked why more shooters are ditching their stories, Bleszinski blamed the cost of developing a single-player campaign, saying they usually cost 75% of the budget, and you burn through the campaign in a weekend, and then players go to multiplayer. He went on to lament the tropes of most shooter campaigns, citing crashing helicopters and blurry vision specifically.
Oh, snap! Cliffy B putting Call of Duty on blast!
Interesting.
No love for Activision these days, it seems. Later in the interview, Bleszinski talked about how many single-player games are either the typical shooter fare or massive open-world games like Skyrim or Assassin's Creed, which take forever to finish, but more importantly, to develop, which means a bigger budget is required.
But still not enough to give those Gears of War characters necks, apparently.
Nothing's enough for that.
Or to add any color but gray. This sheds a bit of light on why so many games are heading in this direction at the moment and has people lamenting about the supposed death of single player, RIP. This trend was more recently noted in games like Battlefront, Rainbow Six Siege, Titanfall, and Evolve, all notable AAA games that focus specifically on multiplayer.
This actually goes in line with a statement that EA's Peter Moore made a while back that made some waves because everyone hated it so much regarding Battlefront's missing campaign. At the time, he pointed to player data EA had on hand, stating that very few people actually play the single player on these kinds of games. That's what the data points to. Maybe players don't like content either, which is why they didn't put that in Battlefront.
Wink.
Don't tell Bruce!
So it stands to reason that if less people are playing the most expensive part of the game, why would developers put that effort in? Game development budgets are growing more with each generation, of course. While last generation's AAA games cost around $20 to $50 million to develop, according to PlayStation's Shuhei Yoshida, modern AAA games are coming in even higher price points than anticipated.
When you look at games like Grand Theft Auto 5, which cost $137 million to make, or Destiny's $140 million, or Metal Gear Solid 5's $80 million development budget, which sounds small in comparison to those other ones, but that's crazy. It makes a little more sense why someone would want to spend a fraction of the money on games that might keep players around long enough to spend more money. For example, Ubisoft's Division is coming in at around $50 million by comparison, and the main draw of that is multiplayer connectivity.
Last generation, the trend was the opposite. Traditional single-player titles started adding multiplayer to ensure that their games didn't end up in the great trade-in bin in the sky.
Didn't really work.
We saw this in a number of games like Dead Space 2, Bioshock 2, the Uncharted series, Metal Gear Solid 4, to varying results. Both Dead Space and Bioshock ditched it on subsequent entries, then Bioshock Infinite didn't quite sell enough to keep Irrational games up and running long-term, or maybe they just got pissed off and didn't do it anymore. Ken Levine's he's a tempestuous.
I still blame you.
Tempestuous.
I love you, but I still blame you.
Why did you leave?
These days, there's a much bigger reliance on DLC add-ons for single-player games to try to keep people from trading in, but again, that's much more expensive to create than multiplayer content. Single-player components generally require writers, voice work, a musical score, mission designers, all of which come at a comparatively higher price tag than the smaller teams required to create new levels, weapons, or animations seen in multiplayer DLC, or if you're Valve, you just let the community do it for you, sell it yourself and take some of the money.
Hey.
Good job, Valve.
Praise Lord Gaben. Do the numbers point to this being a viable model, though? Time will only tell if this strategy works for Battlefront and Rainbow Six, but it really hasn't worked out well for some of the others. Titanfall and Evolve, in particular, suffered huge losses in their player count pretty quickly. Within just a few months, multiple playlists were removed from the PC version of Titanfall, which is essentially cutting 40% of the game's content when you consider it's only playable in multiplayer.
Yeah, but you got robot things. Likewise, Evolve's player base has all but completely bottomed out. Right now, it averages just about 500 players per day after being out for less than a year. That hurts. That's the saddest stat I've ever heard.
Wah, wah, wah. And while Rainbow Six player bases isn't quite the same barrel scraping, it's still on par with older shooters like Borderlands 2. It doesn't really even hold a candle to the 550,000 players that CSGO is averaging right about now. Players have learned the hard way that a more expensive expensive game certainly doesn't equal more content.
Yeah, Eddie, you're a slut for Counter-Strike. Why does that work when other games don't?
Yeah, well, Counter-Strike Global Offensive is actually a perfect example of the ideal type of game that many of these developers would like to emulate. It's got a less expensive development cycle than a game like Star Wars Battlefront, and to date it's sold a whole lot more units. It's got 18 million compared to Battlefront's 13 million.
Although it's been out a lot longer, right?
Yes.
It's been out a lot longer, and Battlefront, that number for Battlefront though is shipped, not actually sold, because they're hiding those things because they like to be tricksy. So it kind of evens out when you really think about it.
Plus, when you combine the $60 price of Battlefront to the $50 season pass, the $15 Counter-Strike game, plus a few skins, who could resist those? You can see why that might hold a bit more appeal. And if Star Wars can't make $60 multiplayer a success, then you almost have to wonder if anyone can pull it off.
Now, the key to longevity in a lot of these multiplayer-only games appears to be the right balance of competition, price, and fresh content. In a lot of ways, it's a chicken and egg scenario, which is so fitting since there's a chicken in the studio right
Barbara!
now. If the player base, of course, isn't there because maybe the price is too high, then there's no incentive for the developer to keep pumping content into the game, and then nobody's there, get it?
Or you can just have a situation like Destiny, which has millions of players desperate to spend money on any kind of new content, but with absolutely nothing to do in almost 5 months, and still no plans announced for what players are even supposed to do next. Unless you count a really lame doubles playlist for Valentine's Day, which we don't since we're all gonna be a Waffle House.
Hell yeah.
We love Waffle
We do love the Waffle House at 4 a.m. Will Cliffy B's Lawbreakers be the game to accomplish what all these other AAA multiplayer-only games have set out to do without much success? A free-to-play game with tight competitive gameplay might win out over a shallower game like Battlefront that has a $60 price tag.
Well, look at games like League of Legends. They're doing just fine.
That's true.
At the end of the day, it's going to have the same problem that any other game has. Do players perceive that its value outweighs its price? That onus has always been on game developers, not on gamers. And in recent years, the answer has always been to go bigger and more expensive with game budgets and content, but we may have stretched that beyond feasibility at this point.
So while developers are trying their hardest to find the magic bullet that keeps players around, it doesn't seem like big budget multiplayer titles are necessarily the only way to do it. So don't worry, your single player games aren't going anywhere. If anything, we're seeing a rise in focused, smaller, and probably more sensibly budgeted single player games that aren't trying to be all things to all people the way a game like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty is.
It's the rise of indie, and I love it. So
Enter the Witness.
So nice. So all of you that love shooting and talking, you'll still get to do plenty of both once you buy the limited edition Day 1 DLC and extended season pass.
What a time to be alive! What do you guys think of this trend toward multiplayer-only titles? Are any of you still playing games like Battlefront, Evolve, or Rainbow Six? And also,
You're the guy playing Evolve. Why? Nice. To get the latest news on Cliffy B's sound bites and the sad numbers of Evolve, like this video and remember to subscribe to the know.
Hey, did my thing pop out? No, it did.
No.
It did okay. I
Stayed
had this
right
one
in.
hair that was like.
All right, we're good, right? We
Thanks,
good?
Eddie.
We good? Hey guys, do you feel educated?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Caleb with the assist by putting up a thumb in something where no one can see or hear him.
Are you trying not to be heard, Caleb?
Yeah. He's just trying to be
Why
a
are
jerk
you-
now.
You troll.
Caleb's a jerk. You heard it here first.
You want to come look at our screen?
Welcome to the know.
Dick
Ultimate
bag.
Frisbee's not a sport.